Hey Lamborghini fans, so next stop on the maintenance list for the Huracan is going to be spark plug replacement. I'm at 18,000 miles. The car's 8 years old. I know age doesn't matter for plugs, no matter what the dealer says. Don't change your plugs when your car's 2 years old if it has 2,000 miles on it. 18,000 miles is the recommended time. So I've already removed the carbon fiber pieces. It's pretty straightforward to remove. The only tricky part is you got to get around the hatch struts. So you have to disconnect the bottom. So what you do is you put a flat screwdriver in here, pop the clip off, and with one hand, or if you have two people it's going to be easier, have one person pop the strut off and pull it out of the way, pull the carbon fiber trim piece out, and then reattach the strut, put the clip back in for safety so this thing isn't falling on you. So we will get to it. I got the closest I could to the OEM plug. I did the NGK PFR 7S8EG. The factory plug for this car, a 2015, is going to be this same part number but without the E. The difference is this is a 1 kilo ohm resistance plug. The factory plug is a 5 kilo ohm resistance plug. Should not matter. That's just for radio interference. These are resistor plugs. So we're going to go ahead. I ordered 12 just in case I drop one and crack it. I have 2 spares. And we'll get into it. So first thing I'm going to do is check the gap on the plugs. The spec says 31 thousandths, but I just like to double check in case one got whacked or something in the factory. Just make sure that they are all pretty close. This one does feel a little tight, but I got 30 thousandths on the shims and we can get that in there. So I'm just going to go through. I have 2 extras, so if there's a couple that are off, I'll just set those aside. I do not have a good plug gapper tool, so that's on the list of things to get. But going to check all the gaps and then set the plugs aside, and then we'll start pulling plugs out. So I'm going to start with the driver's side because it's easier. So first thing to do is going to be take off these 2 bolts holding the harness in, and then unlocking the connector to each coil pack and pulling the harness away from the coils. One thing I realized right away is this hood strut is really bothering me, so I disconnected it, taped it up, and just put a board in to hold the hood up while I work on this side. So this is going to give me a lot more space. So to disconnect these guys, pretty simple. Start with the back one, put a screwdriver in here and pull down, get to the next one, pull down, and then just work your way towards the front. Okay, after about 10 minutes of pulling, I got the first coil out. I think they really grip on to the spark plug, so when I put these back in, I'll put some silicone grease on the spark plug boots. But first one's out, so 4 more to go on this side. When the coils are still in the engine, what I found best was to use a nice thick cotton string or thin rope and get it just under this connector here. And you can almost pull it out with just the rope, but I get it started, and then once you get the coil pulled up a little bit, start wiggling it back and forth, and then put one hand on this side of the coil, and then with the other hand pull on the rope, and you should be able to get them to pop out without any damage or using tools to mark it up. I was using a big channel lock for the first one, and then it was leaving some indentions on the sides. So by the end, I was just using a rope and one hand method to get these popped out. And then before I put these in, I'm gonna take the paintbrush, paint some silicone paste in here. They slide on real nice. Well, all these are pretty simple to get with the spark plug wrench, so you're not going to be able to pull them out unless you have a socket that grips it pretty well. So just have a magnet here. Just going to go in and just grab the spark plug tips with the magnet. Get all of them pulled. Alright, got all the plugs back in and torqued down, so I'm going to put a little bit of silicone paste inside the boots to help them slide on a little easier. It's kind of hard to get in there, so I'm just going to use a little paintbrush. Get some silicone on the brush. Drop that down in here. Just kind of paint the inside with some silicone. Not too much, but just to lube up the sides a little bit. Okay, all the coils back in place, so now we're just going to click the harness back in and put the two bolts back in to hold the harness tubing back onto the head. Alright, this side 100% done, so I could just tell you to do the same on the other side, but I'm not going to leave you hanging because there is an elephant in the room, which is the coolant reservoir. So it looks like there is just two bolts that hold that on. I'm going to leave all the tubes connected. I don't want to get air in the system. I just did the coolant flush, if you've watched that video. So I'm going to pull these bolts out and try to move this off to the side, see if we get enough access to get all these out. Alright, so I've removed or relocated the coolant reservoir. I just removed those two bolts and then unclipped these hoses from some plastic clips. However, this bracket in the rear is covering the back two. So if you flip up this, you'll see there's 4 bolts holding this bracket in. So we're going to pull those 4 bolts. Hopefully this bracket pops out, and then we should be pretty clear to do this side. The passenger side is actually quite a bit easier. There's lots of room here. What I did is just did a zip tie here and then tied up with a rope the reservoir ball. So no issues at all. Everything came out real nice. I'm going to show you a little trick, the best way I found to get the coils pulled out, because they are pretty tricky to get pulled out. They stick pretty badly on the plugs. Now I'll show you the correct way to install these retainers and the coil packs. So first, you'll see there's 2 slots on the retainer, and there's the mating metal part for those 2 slots. So first you want to put this retainer, get it lined up with those slots, and then make sure this is seated all the way down. Then take your coil pack, it's lubed up already, orient it so it fits correctly in there, and then push the coil pack down all the way into the retainer, and you'll feel it bottom out. It's important to make sure this is all lined up and pushed down all the way before you put everything back together. Going back to the driver's side coils, I didn't feel I had all these seated, so I redid this side. And what I found is that to really plug the harness in, you can't have the coils pushed all the way down, because this heat shield right here interferes with the harness. So you got to leave the coils maybe sticking out about a 1/2 inch, and then get the harness plugged into all the coils, get them all clicked in, and then after you have it plugged in, push down on all the coils to get them fully bottomed out. Alright, everything's put back together. Coolant ball is secured. So just going to do a little engine bay detailing before I put the carbon pieces back in, and that's it for the plug change. Not too bad.